council meeting this month. To open us, could I please ask Councillor Lambert to lead us in karakia?
Tātou, me karakia tātou te karakia whakataka te hau. Whakataka te hau, dūru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai. E hira ki ana te ātakura, he tio, he huka, he hau, si hei, mauri ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Welcome all councillors, members, executive staff and those joining us online. Our housekeeping. This meeting has been live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel. In an earthquake, drop, cover and hold. If the shaking is long or strong, when shaking subsides, leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed immediately towards Napier Hill along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up the steps to Cameron Road. In an evacuation, if an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area on the grass at the corner of Dalton and Voltaire Street. And the wharepaku are located down the hallway outside the chamber entrance. I call for any apologies for today's meeting. I have one from Tanya Hopmans. I'm happy. Councillor Lambert?
Quite a mood. Leave early. We're not finished by 2:30.
We're not finished by 2:30. Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to move the apologies from Tanya. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Van Beek. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Are there any notices? Notices. Confirmation of the 26th of March minutes. Are there any changes to be made to those minutes? If there are not, can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Harding, Councillor Williams. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. There are no speakers for the public forum. I call for minor items not on the agenda. There are none. Okay, we move into our one and only decision item, affixing the Commons seal. If there are no questions around this item, I am happy to move. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Van Beek. All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Moving on to the information, the one and only information item is an update on the progress of implementing recommendations from the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review. Chris, kia ora,
Yes.
are you leading us?
Well, I'm really just introducing Louise and the team. So this is our first of our quarterly feedback reports as to progress, and it also comments on the independent review process. And of course, this sits under the broader umbrella of the white paper or the greater story around our response to wet weather events, obviously that Desiree has been looking at, but this is specifically reporting against the actions of the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review. So if need be, we can get a bit of an update from Desiree on that other work. But I will hand it to Louise in the first instance to take us through. You'll probably acknowledge a lot of work has been achieved, and I'm very pleased with the team and with the amount of work that has been carried out over the last few years. So with that,
Thank you, Chris. We will take the paper as read, but we have got a brief presentation to just go through some of the highlights for you. This is the first quarterly report on progress of those projects related to the 47 recommendations from the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review that we agreed on at the council meeting on the 18th of December at the end of last year. I'll hand over to Jill Leanne first to quickly give an overview, and then I'll focus in on the 6 projects.
So this is an update on the progress of all the recommendations, so 47 from the HBI IFR report. It shows that 50% of recommendations are either considered completed or as business as usual. Over 50% are underway, and 30% are partially underway or require further assessment. And this just means that work has started in parts, but we will need to look at additional funding to achieve some specific outcomes of the recommendations. So areas of work that will require funding and for future discussion for the next annual plan review or LTP will be shown in the next slide. So move to our timeline. So the green's all the key work that's underway and was prior, and the yellow is the priority projects that were identified earlier this year, and the blue is the projects that are either linked to the will be the next stage, or that we'll come back and have a discussion around funding at a later time. We'll move to the 6 projects.
Thanks, Jules. So we have 6 key priority projects that we have been working through. So you'll remember that funding was requested at the end of last year, but that funding doesn't kick in until the 1st of July. So a lot of the work that we've been doing in the last few months has been preliminary work and preparation for when that funding is available, or where we have been able to accelerate using internal resources and available funding that we already had. So the first one is the Extreme Weather Hub. We're pleased to say that this is now live. It took a little bit longer to get through phase 1 than we had initially considered. But phase 1 is using all the information that we already had available on our website, pulling it all together in one location with some educational and guidance information for the public. We've socialised this Extreme Weather Hub with our partner organisations, and just last night I was at a community forum for resilient community hubs with Hastings District Council and CEDAM, and it's been very well received. The communities are really happy to have this tool available to them. It is only phase 1, and phase 2 will kick in July when we have some more funding, and we already have feedback on what phase 2 might look like, which includes the flood forecasting project, which I'll come to in a moment. But this is in development still. It's just a starting point, and we've asked for feedback from the community on what else they would like to see there, whether it's user-friendly, or what else they would like to see on those pages. But it's been quite well accepted so far. The bylaws. So this project we brought to you earlier this year to get formal sign-off that we could proceed. The planning is in progress. We will need a little bit of extra resourcing, which was in that funding request at the end of last year, and we will start making proper progress in July when we've got that extra resource available, and we hope that these bylaws will be able to go out for public consultation at the start of next year. The Trigger Levels project, so this is a really significant project. We are working with CEDAM and the TAs and FENS and the police and other partner organisations. We've had 2 initial working group meetings. We've had really good buy-in from our partner organisations. Everybody is very keen to get started on this project. We've agreed that we will start with 3 pilot communities, but we will need to go out to those pilot communities and just converse with them first about whether they're willing to partake in this project. So we haven't reached that stage yet, but it's got really good buy-in from our partners, and everyone is in agreement that we need to accelerate that particular project. The flood forecasting system, we've split this into 2 phases. So the first phase is to take the sort of pilot that Craig showed to you at the end of last year when we did a bit of a show and tell, and put that onto a more stable platform so that we can then build on that and make it publicly available. The platform that Craig and his team had been using was good for their internal use and for what they had initially thought that it would be used for, but to have it available externally with lots of visitors and things, that system wouldn't have been compatible. So that's happening at the moment. The reimagining of flood resilience you will be very familiar with, as we've been in front of you a few times to talk about. It's making really good progress now. As Chris alluded to, it is part of the wider umbrella project that Desi is working on that paper, and we didn't reference that in this particular paper, but we will do so going forward. It's the only one out of these projects that we have come to you individually to focus on because it is so significant. And so going forwards, that will form part of that discussion. And the last one is the hazard portal. So we're all aware that the hazard portal is a really, really useful tool. It has an awful lot of information on it, and the platform that it sits on is vulnerable with the amount of visits that it gets. And so we are undertaking this business case to see what is the best way to move forward. But the funding isn't available until July, so we hope to come back to you later in the year, probably around October, with an update on how that is progressing.
Yeah. May I ask you next slide?
Yeah, sure. Councillor Sears.
Thank you. Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Louise. So exciting to see so many things coming together at once. The Extreme Weather Hub, I'm sorry I missed understanding that was live, and I'm sorry I didn't know about the meeting last night. I'd very much like to come to those and support staff around that. So if we can have invites that, I'd really like to, if I could.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, through you, Chair. It was an invite from Hastings District Council
they
on
ran
Sedum.
it.
It's
Okay.
their meeting, and they asked us to come along and present on the Extreme Weather Hub because they had seen it. But yes, next time I'll...
Yes, I just like to really, to be there to support staff is such
Absolutely.
a good way where we can be there for you. The trigger levels, I'm thrilled to see that started, and that there's going to be 3 pilot communities. The working group established, who is the working group? Is that across the councils and Sedum? How's that working?
Yes, it is. So that working group is HBRC, Sedum, the 4 TAs, the FENS, police, MSD and St John's.
Oh, brilliant.
Antefata Ora.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant. And that's all a technical advisory group? There's no governance on that? Not from other councils either?
No.
It's just a technical
It's
working
just a
group at this
technical
stage?
working group, and it's actually chaired by Sedum. So Shane is leading that conversation as Sedum as the heart of the evacuation protocols. Julianne and I are supporting it from a facilitation perspective, and then coordinating the input from our HBRC engineers.
Okay, I'm really Chair, that's, I think, just such important work for us, and particularly around our conversations around the evacuation plans being such a priority. Can you say yet the 3 that you've identified, 3 communities, or you want to talk to them first?
Well, I think we need to talk to the
You haven't
communities
okay.
first, and we haven't done that yet, but that is the next step in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh.
On the flood forecasting system in the paper, 14.4, you sort of alluded to this before, but I still don't really understand it. The second phase will look to advance the data by moving to envelope modelling rather than a forecast model. Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. So it's very important to understand that our models take input from Met Service. So we don't create the Met Service. It's essentially a very detailed forecast of a rain grid. And they typically use 3 different models which come up with 3 different potential realities in the future. We rely on Met Service to use their experience to provide what they call the model of the day, or the model that they think, using their judgment and experience, is the most likely model to occur. Now, very often those models are very much aligned, which would give us a deal of comfort that an unlikely outlier scenario is unlikely. Sometimes those models are divergent and different. So there might be one model that says it's going to rain twice as much as the other model in a certain location. So historically, and we use the model of the day. We put one model through one weather model through our river modelling software to come up with what we thought would occur. So what we can now do is that we have automated a lot of our models, so they're a lot more quicker to run, which was very difficult to do where they were more manual. And what we're working towards is putting more than one scenario in the model at any one time. So that's what we talk about, an envelope. So it could be an optimistic and pessimistic view in terms of that weather grid into the model to come up with an envelope of realities.
Okay, so you could have the end result in the new setup could be 3 different scenarios, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would give us some comfort in saying if things didn't pan out the way we thought the forecast would pan out, this is what might occur. And that would give us additional intelligence. And of course, the skill in that is not crying wolf.
Yeah.
Because there'll always be a worst case
Yep.
scenario.
So just another question. Do you know was that available at Gabrielle? And
No, so that wasn't available. We were in the, through Gabrielle, we were running a single model based on the intelligence from Met Service.
oh, okay, well, no, that's interesting because from what you've just said, had those options been available at Gabrielle, that might have said to you, oh, one of these is pretty bad and we need to take this a bit more seriously than it looks.
Well, first thing, we were taking it very seriously.
I
So
realised
I wouldn't
that was
want
wrong, as I was saying.
the public to believe that we weren't taking it seriously.
Yeah.
But it gives us an additional tool in the toolkit, essentially to look at a broader range of outcomes to what we've historically looked at.
Councillor Curtin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to go to number 4, flood forecasting systems, and my question really is about ongoing reporting, maintenance, if you like, reporting back to governance on whether things are being looked at on a regular basis. So sort of, if you like, what is your regime to confirm that checks are being made on the infrastructure, that tests are being carried out on a regular maintenance regime? And I've got in mind the way in which IT are currently reporting back through the Audit and Risk Committee about incidents that arise. So there's a template around that. So as part of this project, are you looking at, if you like, checks and confirmation that we are doing the things we need to do to keep the system safe and secure?
So, Councillor, that's in relation to our flood forecasting system.
Both the forecasting is one aspect of it, the other is the infrastructure to feed the data in for the forecasting.
So we already have a target that we report to Council around execution of our maintenance. So that's an existing report that comes to Council where we report both on a operating maintenance and capital work that we've met the targets for that maintenance. So that's an existing report that already occurs.
Where do we report that? Just remind me.
So that comes, I think, in the quarterly governance report.
CNS.
CNS, it would normally get that report first, and then it would probably follow through to the full council.
Okay. I'll have to go and remind myself of that, but had you considered then, if you like, the framework that you're operating in, your quality assurance framework for across from start to finish on your whole flood forecasting system?
Yeah. So again, flood forecasting system is the modelling taking in inputs. If you're talking about improving the quality of understanding our maintenance, so you would recall probably an LTP ago, we committed to investing heavily in transforming our asset management framework and systems, and we're well through that process, and that will bring, it's not yet complete, we go live at the end of this financial year in terms of our maintenance planning tools. That will give us a much greater ability to report planned maintenance executed on time, planned maintenance executed late, and all those sorts of things. So there's been a huge investment in that side of things. So that will help with any future reporting that might be desired around the percentage of maintenance undertaken, etc.
Okay, I wonder, sorry, Madam Chair, this goes to a number of issues for us. If we could have line of sight at least on confirming in this reporting framework that we are progressing and we've got a quality assurance process and reporting framework, at least it's been reviewed in the light of what you said about reconfiguring that. Is there room to put that into the your reports coming back to us on these particular?
So I'd probably have to take that question under advisement and look at the detail. This, of course, is a response to the 47 recommendations out of HBIFR.
Yeah.
Now,
If there are other desires, we can look at how we report that back.
Fine, but I am taking it straight out of recommendation 17, so that's why I'm...
Yeah.
A bit of clarity that might help me through you, Chair. Are you talking mostly about the telemetry system, Councillor?
Yeah, so it talks about that,
Right.
and I just assumed that our flood forecasting system included consideration of the infrastructure needed to provide the data.
Yeah, so it's quite complex the way it's all segmented up, which is why I think the best thing we can do is get back to you with a comprehensive answer. So there is investment in telemetry. I think our Ian's previously gone through all of the improvements in the redundancy, etc. There's also a reportable figure called the availability of the telemetry system, which I think needs to sit above 97%. And again, that sits within that quarterly reporting that goes to CNS. So there's already some measures there. And if there's, I guess, desire for further measures, we can look at how they can be easily put together.
Thank you. Councillor Roadley?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all. How cool is it that the webcams are all about Whitehall?
We just looked at them.
And I'm very happy with that. I do, just a very small little piece of me wonders if the rest of the region, is there the plan?
They are coming. They are coming.
I've got white
I knew you were going to say that, but don't worry too much about it. What I'm interested in is we received out of the NIWI funding parcel, that was where this got funded from, wasn't it? Is there still headroom to shaking of heads? No.
Not out of the NIWI.
No, this was a council
So
decision.
We'll answer. We'll finish.
I was going
Let
to
me
just
finish
say,
your question.
Well, that probably do we have capacity in the money that you've got to keep adding to that suite of webcams for them to come into here? Is that coming in the next annual plan? Are we
No,
all over it?
so we do. So the expansion of webcams was previously agreed to in the 2021 LTP, and that work will continue. It's been accelerated through that process. There are some challenges that we're working through. So one is privacy considerations. And the second one is we rely a lot on the utilisation of private land to locate these. In some instances, we need to negotiate that cameras located on private land cannot be publicly accessed. And so there is a raft of issues that we're working through, but the full plan is that we have cameras available at most of our locations.
You're shaking of head. In my foggy memory of the telemetry upgrades that we were doing as part of the NIWI project, webcams were not part of that. That was more. Can you just?
So the web, so the CAM part is part of that as well. So we've got multiple funding streams. So some is from NIWI, some is from existing funding, but the fact that they're being exported to the public is very much part of the portal, part of the web work, which would need to be funded out of the additional funds set aside. So it's quite complex. We've got 47 recommendations that actually link to lots of different projects, multiple funding streams, and some projects have multiple funding components.
I guess the key idea for the general public is that the money is available. We're just working through the process to get them
That's correct.
accessible to the public.
Yeah, so effectively every month or so another camera is coming online is sort of the rate of progress.
I did have one piece of feedback from a friend who's an avid surfer at the bar, and he said it's so annoying because everybody can see when the surf is here. So, yeah, great.
Spot's been found.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to go along because you all put your hands up at once. So, Councillor Hardy.
Kia ora, Chair. Looking through you, firstly, just to reiterate Councillor Sear's comments, it's fantastic to see the progress on those 6 priority projects. It's never fast enough, but in the context of all that council staff have to do with all the fiscal constraints we're putting on you, well done. So thank you. It's highly appreciated. 2 questions. One, just in relation to trigger levels, I'm seeking some explanation from staff. There's a public perception that this ought to be a really, really simple thing, that often the public know, they can spot triggers. They have a stick that they can identify in a river or something like that. And that why haven't we got to trigger levels already? Why is it so hard? So I'd just like some explanation. I think there are answers to that. I'd just like a little bit of explanation about you. Louise, you described it as complex. Why is it complex?
So I might start the answer and then let Louise go into the detail of the working group. But we already have a large number of triggers that technical staff work with. We have alarms on our telemetry, alarming staff to certain conditions. We have certain conditions in which we would act and not act, and certain conditions in which we convey messages to CDM and the community. So a lot of triggers already exist. I think the part that we're working on is making triggers more meaningful to the public. And the example that you say, that someone in the area that they live, they look at a tree or an embankment or a bridge and they understand the behaviour of the river and what it means in terms of a hazard, we would be saying to those people, well, you already have a good system. You don't need to rely on another system. It's a bit like with an earthquake, if it's long and strong, get gone. So if you know what it means for you, don't wait for someone else to tell you. You can respond by yourself. And in fact, that's a preference and the best way to deal with any hazard. So we do have triggers. We have an awful lot of triggers. They are connected to the work that we do. And what we're wanting to do in both the modelling work that we provide, but also within the trigger work with communities, is work more closely with communities about what triggers might be more meaningful to them. How in some of our information we put on our web, which is a graph of a flow in a river, we've already started putting, at this level it impacts the state highway, at this level it impacts a bridge. And a lot of that information, some of that we've had internally, but it's all about getting it on the external viewer. So that's part of the work. And I might hand to Louise on working through why it's... And the final thing before I do that is sometimes triggers are predictive. So if you take, a lot of our catchments are quite fast acting. Recent floods in Australia, they say it will take 4 days for the flood to come to the town. We're not quite in that space, it's hours. And so it's also just traversing how we are nominating triggers in advance, because for people to respond and get out of places, they will need to be gone before the river arrives in some instances. So that's, again, part of the complexity. And I'll hand to Louise to...
Yeah, so through the working group, when we're working with CDM and the TA, so Hawke's Bay Regional Council's input into this is the data and the river levels and the projection of where we think the forecasting. But it's not our role to do the evacuations. We don't manage the evacuation protocols, so we need to work with CDM and the communities to understand at what point do they want to be evacuated and how long is that going to take. So we may have an existing trigger level, but it's for our purposes. The trigger level that CDM needs may be several hours prior to that, so that they have enough time to evacuate, and they need to be able to evacuate in daylight hours. And so sometimes, I think it's been referred to before, that if there was an event, we may sometimes be asking to evacuate a community before the rain has even fallen, because if it's that severe, we need to get those people moved. So it's working through all of that with CEDAM, with the TAs, with those resilient community hubs, and with those communities about at what point is their trigger level in their community that they want us to go, yes, we need to evacuate, and what is the evacuation plan, where are those people going? So that's all of that trigger levels project is looking at that, but the part that we play is only a small part of that.
Okay, in the interest of time, I do have a second question, but I'll defer, and if there's time, I'll come back to the second.
Okay.
But thank you for the explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Harding. Councillor Williams.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, look, I've got the extreme weather hub up, and it's fantastic. And my understanding from looking back at the December paper is the flood forecasting system, which is the phase 2 element, or part of the flood forecasting system is the phase 2 element of that project, would mean we can kind of translate our projections into, this means that bridge is going to be up to here, right? Is that what that's doing? Because I've got that sort of language here, that it would, yeah, am I on the right track there? That's partly what you're about?
Yeah, you are, yep.
Yeah, that said, converting the data into many information that can be interpreted by the public at place to make decisions regarding. So instead of just seeing a model and a whole bunch of funny graphs, they can say, hey, tomorrow at 12 o'clock it's going to be here. Okay, so I think that's really, really important, because, I mean, what I, just to sort of put some context to my next question, which is based on where Councillor Harding's coming from, we've created a culture of reliance, and I think everyone's the loser for that. This organisation's the loser for it. You didn't tell us to go, whether they did or not, and civil defence and where that fits in. But at the end of the day, you do need to fall back more and more, I think, as a society on the it's long or strong, get gone operating mode. And so that's why I wonder why it is actually so complicated for trigger levels, and I've discussed this with you, thank you for your time on that, and Shane, Chris, but listening to your answer there before, Louise, if you just said to the community, look, what trigger do you want? Do you think it's meaningful to you? We'll give you the information on when that's approaching, and this phase 2 project will help with that. You cry wolf. You call the shots. Why would it be so hard for small communities like Esk or Parklefai, for example, just to do that? I think I know the answer to that now, but I'm just wanting them to hear it. While we deal with the more complicated ones that would necessarily involve civil defence and FENS and all those other people that would have to be really on board about when they're pulling the trigger. So for those smaller ones that are just, say, pilots or at community scale, is it really that hard?
So I'd say when it comes to self-evacuation, I think it is a lot easier, and everyone will have a different risk appetite, and everyone will have a different ability to move away, or have things that they need to do to move away. So everyone's individual circumstances will be quite different, but they are best placed to make those decisions early. We also have on the other component, I guess, obligations of civil defence, that when a deadly hazard is arriving, the need to evacuate people out of the way. So that's where they have their process, there's time, emergency services get involved. Without a declaration of emergency, no one can compel anyone to do anything. And so and we need to know where these people are going to go, and we need to know that the egress is safe. And so I think for small isolated incidents with one community, right, it's a lot more simpler. But if you said we want to do an evacuation plan for a Gabriel size event for Heretaunga, that would be extremely complex, because your safe evacuation routes, where would people go? A lot of places where people would go are actually subject to the hazard, and we were working through that in Gabriel. People were going to places that were being identified as subject to flood hazard, and there's a great complexity of how you might do that. So I think there's a sliding scale.
Yeah, and I suppose there's an issue if you have a kind of a hybrid approach. Which one is it?
Yeah.
And, I mean, like, the pilot trigger self-evacuation by community works for the ESC 2018 flood. Your point being it's not going to necessarily work for Gabriel, right?
Yeah.
Is that the issue?
I
I
think,
just think the sooner we can get in front of the communities and explain this stuff and ask them to be involved,
yeah.
and at the moment it has been, you've talked to all the agencies, I really think the sooner you can get in front of those communities, the better. Partly for feeling safer, in the sense that there's all this perception we get nothing's changed. It clearly has. But the sooner they're onboarded to that, I think you'll find the better everyone off is. So that was that question. I don't know if you had any further response to that.
Okay, so last evening when we met with the Resilient Community Hub leaders with Hastings District Council and talked through the Extreme Weather Hub, they are all very, very focused on the flood forecasting system.
Yeah.
And that goes to what you were just saying, Councillor, that being able to see the forecast of how high the river level might go, and then they can self-determine. That is what they want.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit of a two-pronged approach. We will have the flood forecasting system. We will try and make the dashboards as community relevant as possible, so that they can self-identify and see themselves within that dashboard. But we still need to do the trigger levels project, and there are vulnerable communities that may take longer to evacuate, rest homes, etc., where CEDAM and the TAs need to know how long they've got to move those communities, which is kind of why we need both.
Okay.
Councillor Van Beek.
Yeah, thank you. Difficult topic, especially when it comes to trigger levels and evacuation. At the moment, we're living in the 7-year bubble where this is actually at our forefront. We were told about 2 or 3 weeks after cyclone that this will affect our community and all of us for 7 years, and then we'll go back to what was normal peacetime again. And so you often talk, about in 3 places, and you also mentioned it yourself, publicly available. And so we are now in this place of 7-year bubble where people have some idea, where can I find that information? Is power on, is power not on? I think the community hubs are going to be quite important in all of this. But in the end, it's not the small level floods that are actually going to undo us. It's the multiple floods right across the region, and that's what we're building all this for. And I still believe that it's not our job to evacuate. It's for us to set the triggers. But at the same time, by making this material publicly available, we could get some really unintended consequences. And I think, I'm not speaking against you, Martin, but I believe that actually this needs to be managed rather than up to each individual, especially once we get to the point where we evacuate and we have egress blocked and we have congested roads, where there needs to be more management of this. And personally, I believe, Queensland, they did it really well. And I had ratepayers who actually rang me and said, are you watching the news?
Yeah.
They're not saying sandbag, evacuate, get out of the way. This is just too dangerous. You need to get out. And again, dog with a bone, I have seen nothing of that yet. This is really great work, and this is good information that actually will inform that process. And as you just have explained, and thank you for that, Louise, that is actually not up to you to actually develop the evacuation plans. But we as a council, we still need to make sure that this is going to happen and happen at speed, because, I don't want to go through what I went through 2.5 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Beek. Are there any further questions? Councillor Roadley and then back to Councillor Harding.
Thank you for a second. Back to the Extreme Weather Hub, I note that you are calling for feedback from it. What's your time frame of when you no longer...
There isn't. This is going to be a continual development. So there's a feedback form on the bottom of the page, and obviously we would like as much as possible before we start making phase 2. but it's never going to be finished. We're going to continue to develop and take on board feedback and get better as much as we can. So yeah, we will take feedback. It goes to a staff member directly in the web team, and he manages all that and collates it, and we'll just make changes as he can.
Councillor Harding, and then I'll go to Will online. Kia ora, Councillor Harding.
Got a chair, and through you. Para 14.5, hazard portal upgrade business case. It mentions there that regulatory requirements for local government to provide access to natural hazard information is changing. Can we have a little bit more information there? What's changing and when, please?
Yeah, Katrina's in the room and she might be better at talking to this point than I am, but the regulations have changed, and from the 1st of July, a regional council will have to provide territorial authorities with all hazard information that we have that's known, so that the territorial authorities can put that on limb reports for individual properties. Exactly how that will work, I don't think has been determined yet through the regulations, Katrina? No. But we're still waiting on guidance from central government. Through the portal.
Through the portal.
So,
Central government working group.
Yeah, come on now.
I was part of a central government working group that was helping to develop those regulations. Just another one that I was on. And they, did I say something?
No.
And they thought that Hawke's Bay's hazard portal was absolutely the right way to go. And it was one of very few in the country. So we'll continue to work on that basis.
Okay, so thank you. I just want to double check my understanding. So we have the data. From the 1st of July, we have an obligation to provide that to the TLAs. It's fine, I understand that. Interested to know either now or at a later date what, if any, obligations there are for new data, because this comes up in the context, for example, of a climate joint committee. It's like, we have some data, there are different standards, some of it's climate fit, some of it's not. Mostly what we have is a deficit of data, and there seems to be a joint responsibility between regional councils and local authorities about that. It seems to be a little bit it seems to be muddled. There seems to be no clarity, well, I'm not aware of it, about who's ultimately responsible for having the right data. So that's one thing. The other thing is, in terms of delivery, the hazard portal is actually, that's a CDM asset, I believe. I understood that CDM control that rather than ourselves. Not correct?
Through you, Chair, in answer to your first question, I think there is so much data available. It's about making sure that that is available in an accessible form, and it's something that central government is working on as part of its wider regulatory reforms. So that's one thing. Central government having lots of conversations about data and how data is made available across CRIs, across regional councils, district councils, across the country. And looking at how they might determine what tools should be used in order to make that data available for public. Secondly, we have a responsibility to provide hazard data as part of land information memorandums. Sensibly, that should be done through the district councils primarily who issue the limbs. We don't want to have a doubling up of limbs. And so I am working with district councils on that. We are waiting for the regulations. In terms of the second part of your question, remind me, which was?
Yeah, it was just ownership of the hazard portal.
Ownership of the hazard portal does not sit with CDM. It's a regional portal, but actually it's a regional council portal, and we intend to work on bringing that largely back in house to HBRC. It's a platform that we maintain for the region. There's work between HBRC and CDM on that. There was one other thing, hazards, that's right. Central government is looking at a national policy statement on hazards. We are likely to get more direction on that before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Just,
Councillor Curtin?
well, can you just expand on that a little bit, because I may have misheard you on the, if you like, the operation of the portal.
Yes.
Who operates it? But HBRC own it, is that?
Traditionally, it was, traditionally it has been part of, there's a governance group that determines what information went onto the portal. And that was administered by Hawke's Bay CEDM. But the portal, the actual, the tool is with HBRC.
And the use of the information?
The use of the information is the region.
Everybody.
Everybody.
can
So
access it.
the TLAs use it for building consents, limbs, members of the public use it for their own information.
So the TAs may pick it up and apply it
They
to
do.
property.
They absolutely do. And they place information on
Oh,
it.
this one, okay.
So it's a regional portal.
We don't control what's other than,
There's a governance group traditionally that have controlled it. The CE has asked me to work with our controller and CEDM on that. I'm currently working with Pip, our Chief Information Officer, as well, and looking at how we can upgrade, change, all of that.
Nick?
Essentially, just as Katrina had said, really, but it had fallen into a bit of a, not a black hole, but it had fallen between agencies a little bit. And so, in order that we deliver the best service we can to the public, it's sensible for a GM here to have some responsibility for getting it wrangled under control, a business case to maintain it, because somebody's got to pay to maintain it, and there's a maintenance schedule, etc. And then some protocols for what gets put on it and when and how those decisions get made. And it just needed that sense of order back over it. It was kind of one of those great initiatives that had started and then kind of got a bit woolly over time. So we're busy putting some structure into it now.
That's a good thing, because from what we hear, there's some Wild West going on.
Councillor Sears?
Thank you, Chair. So, Katrina, any of the TAs or CEDM can put a layer into this, into the portal,
Yes,
anytime. So, for example, if suddenly...
through governance groups, through the governance group.
Sure, but the point I'm making is if they do a landslide risk, which is one of the tabs I'm looking at, and decide to put that across the region, that would affect a whole lot of properties. There must be some sort of process or discussion as to how hazards are loaded in relationship to what that means for properties.
As we've discussed-
As I understood it, I thought CEDM simply did that, and then the different councils managed their approach to it. But you're saying there's a governance of all groups.
Yes, the portal is just simply that. It's a tool in order to access what exists as hazard layers out there. As we've discussed, the landslide data existed since, I think it was 2008, was it, or something like that?
2008.
And it was loaded into the portal in 2015. That's not new information. It's just providing more accessible information to public, information that district councils had already been aware of, but ensuring that it is in one place and ensuring that everybody has the same access to all of the data.
I think it needs to happen to tidy up, and there be some checks and balances around the control of it, and making sure that everyone knows that this is what's to be implemented. So I think there's been confusion over years, and it sounds like some were holding the pen, some were putting it on. Whatever it is, we need to be really clear about who's responsible for it and what the role is there. So when can you bring some feedback to us? Because it sounds like we all have an interest in how this operates.
Ultimately, the CE has tasked me with this, and I have got some time scheduled with the rest of the parties involved. So as soon as I can, I'm not sure at this point in time when I will bring that back to you, but I will.
Okay, thank you.
Supplementary to that, Madam Chair, could you include an assessment of risk and who carries any liability as to, one, the accuracy of the data, and two, the use of the data which may cause loss to individual landowners? Is it the governance group, or is it the regional council because they hold their tool? Who do I sue?
For the money.
I'll bring that information back to you.
Additional to this
Yeah,
line?
Kia ora, Chair. Look, I just note in the paper that the comment around item 5, the hazard portal business case, we are expecting in October to get a business case around the development of the hazard portfolio. And I just note that we'll be well served if that takes a broad view as part of that business case takes a broad view about the issue and the problem of hazard data, including the data itself, who owns it, who delivers it, who governs, and how decisions are made about how it's applied. I just think that context, there's a lot buried in it, and a lot of it has been, but it hasn't. I don't think it hasn't come to a governance level, and it's a little bit confused at the moment, I think. So that context will be important when we look at the business case, and there's an opportunity to bring it all together, please.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you, Chair. That's very indulgent of you. I think just the last sort of thought to leave with it is the question from a governance point of view, is there a difference between the hazard map and the portal and then the application of those hazards onto LIMS, and understanding those two as separate pieces and how those work together or how that process works? I think that's the real nub of the question that Councillor Curtin's alluding to as well.
Through you, Chair, once we have the regulations, I'll be able to bring you some more information on that.
Thank you.
Oh, Chair, I do have one more question on that topic. Well, we've got...
And then Will's been waiting patiently,
Oh, no,
so
I'll let Councillor Foley go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Foley,
He's close
thank
to
you.
the coffee machine.
Thanks, Chair. I do want to go off on quite a bit of different tangent if I am allowed to just ask a question outside of the priority projects. Is that okay?
I'll go back to Councillor Williams and then I'll come back to you, okay? Because you've been waiting so patiently. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, it was just about this question of funding becoming available. I was looking back at the December paper, and the recommendation or the paragraph there was that we'd actually deal with this in the 26-27 annual plan. So have we made some decision to bring funding forward to this annual plan, 25, sorry, whatever you were into, 26? What's happened there? Has something changed?
Through you, Chair, no, nothing has changed, and funding will be a constraint. That will be part of the business case that we bring forward.
So it's not that the funding's available now, it would get a business case approved in time for the 6-7 annual plan, if that's the idea?
Yes.
Because at the moment it's overloaded and it can't handle new information, that's the gist of it.
Correct.
Yes.
Somewhat, yes.
So through you, Chair, the decision on the 18th of December was for the business case to look into what would be required to upgrade or stabilise or whatever was required for the hazard portal, and then request funding.
So we've got funding
through
for the business case.
Yes, we've got funding for the business case, but not for whatever would.
Thank you, that's the light bulb, thank you, it's got it. Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Foley.
Thanks, Chair, and might be helpful while Katrina's there. I just want to ask a question on recommendation 8, and it's about the blockages of bridges and breaching of stop banks. So we didn't necessarily get blockages down CHB, we did, but a lot of places the natural banks breached in the approaches to bridges and washed those out. And I guess my question is around us working closer or advising or submitting, whatever you want to call it, with TA district plans around protection of areas around our infrastructure, whether it's their bridges or stop banks, such as SNA and things, because that's, in hindsight, that's been a real restrictive thing to either doing maintenance beforehand or repairs afterwards. And I guess it's just around, the question is, I guess through the CE or Katrina, around sort of just making a note on looking at those sort of areas of district plans going forward a bit closer.
Any response, Katrina?
Through Chair, I know that the policy team are working very closely with all of the district council policy teams on what plan changes are necessary in order to address hazards, but also in terms of what future plan rules might need to be. So I think what you're asking is in hand, but I will raise that as a matter for them to specifically consider.
Thanks, Katrina. It's just going back to Councillor Van Beek's point about, in this time of addressing where we've come from and learning from our mistakes, really, and just ensuring these things don't happen again.
Got it.
Thank you, Councillor Foley. There are no further questions. I do have one last one, and it's a...
We do have one more slide.
Oh,
that
you
we
do
can-
have one more
just
slide.
this last
Okay,
one, just-
I'll ask it after that. Thank you.
So lastly, we have engaged an independent provider to kind of provide assurance to council on that we are giving effect appropriately within our actions and projects, that we give effect to the recommendations. So we have engaged with PwC, and we will start work with them in July, when the funding kicks in. So we've been quite specific on our scope, and we've asked them to assess and validate the analysis process that we went through to develop the programme of work, to ensure that we've understood and that our actions will give appropriate effect. They will undertake a gap analysis to ensure that no actions have been missed. And they will also evaluate if the work that we say is complete and that the recommendations have been achieved.
Just clarity, Madam Chair. So that's in regards to was it the 47 recommendations?
Yes.
So how do we as governors, how do we understand whether that what we've been receiving is actually what has taken place? I suppose that's what you're asking here.
Correct, so that's the purpose of this independent assessment, to give you confidence that nothing has been missed.
I think it would be helpful also to provide some analysis and report back to our independent reviewers, in a way to acknowledge, their work, but to also show our implementation progress. I think they would really appreciate that feedback. My other question is along the lines of how we are communicating, particularly the Weather Hub, and how far a scope we're spreading that. What does that look like? Because there are meetings, that's great, and that's an isolated environment. But what else are we doing to promote, it's only as helpful as the many users that actually engage with it. So what is that plan? Kia ora, Mike.
To answer your question, we decided on a very slow rollout. So an email went out to you councillors, staff here. We decided that we didn't want to be shouting it from the rooftops necessarily, because it is only stage one. We don't want people to have unrealistic expectations when they come to us. So we've done a very slow rollout, and we are doing it through meetings that, like Louise goes to. We're doing it through the school, that we're letting people know through the school program, the Enviro schools, and when we're out in schools, that kind of thing. We're not planning on any big media release or any big announcement, no. But I'd welcome any of your help in spreading the word, and I'd be happy to hear of opportunities for us to talk about this too.
I think it's quite important that the message goes to governors of our partners.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, it has done that too, through the TAs.
Right, through a meeting forum or,
Okay.
I'm
no,
just
sorry.
asking
Oh, sorry.
formally,
Yes, okay, sorry. So
yeah.
through the comms managers at the TAs, we also alerted them to the fact and asked them to inform their respective governors and so forth.
I think, Chair, rather than slow, I'd maybe reterm that as it was a bit of a soft launch to get an idea of what the feedback might look like. And we really wanted to get through this meeting as well and give elected members and others, including the TAs and others where we've kind of done a bit of testing, get some feedback and then probably make a bit more of it than we currently have, because you don't want to go off with somebody and something and then there people come back, it's not what we wanted at all. But I think we've now got to a stage where we kind of feel that majority of feedback has been pretty supportive and people are making constructive comments about how we might go forward. So happy to think about then how we might do it a harder launch than the soft approach to date.
Just a question there. So we heard earlier about the pilot taking place. Is that part of the thinking behind it? Let's get through this pilot and see how some of that interaction stuff works as part of that.
I think they're two separate things. So we have gone live on the portal, which is an improvement on everyone to access information, and the test case is around the evacuation work and triggers. So eventually, all the work and all the relevant information will end up in the hub. Yep.
And just through Chair, I would reinforce what Louise is saying. This is sort of, we're taking what they call the Facebook approach. We'll always be in beta. We'll always be trying to improve. We'll always be seeking feedback. And if people may be interested to know, we've already made a couple of tweaks based on that feedback, which was some of the levels information we've put on the hub.
I think there's probably the right time where we make this a lot more public and we do step up the comms. I can appreciate where you've come from with the softer launch, almost a testing phase with the Weather Hub, but I think it'd be good to consider how we step up the communications of it. Okay.
Just one last question from us. This was our first quarterly report on progress. The plan obviously is to come back quarterly. Are you happy with the format, the layout, the way it was presented, or was it too much information in the appendices where we have the 1 to 47, or are you happy with the way that it was presented? Just for next time.
Yeah.
I was happy, but Councillor Kuta?
I've already mentioned to you, I just wonder whether the issues I talked to you about, we could just incorporate that. So we've got line of sight on that significant big picture project.
Noted.
Yes.
Sorry, and the other one, I also appreciate line of sight, and I really like the way you've framed those recommendations about the flood forecasting system. So determining best solutions for the long-term security and stability of the flood system. I wonder whether you could come back and report on how you're looking at the whole sort of fail-safe assurance reporting and review. So we do have a high level of confidence, top of the organisation to the bottom, right through, that everyone's got their eyes on, that we're assuring the system is both functional, operating and working.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, that may not be this team, but we might ask the telemetry and monitoring and Pip, who manages all of that ICT stuff, to come and talk to you about how that is managed, and we can incorporate her feedback into this report. That's
appreciate it's outside of the scope of, but in terms of reporting, yes, we tick that box. We're making sure that happens, sort of thing.
Take that on.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Van
Quick question, just on the reporting back. What is the timing for the paper on the reimagining flood resilience? Have you got an idea when that will come back to us?
I don't think we have anything else scheduled, but we are willing to come back whenever you would like us to. I think the next council meeting, maybe we had our first technical advisory group meeting this morning with our partner organisations, the TAs and the PSGs. It will probably be worthwhile to have one more of those meetings, which is already scheduled for the 20th of May, to really sort of ground in how that team is going to work and get that feedback, and then maybe come back to this table and give you an update. So if not the end of May, then June. But I will be guided by.
Yeah. Through you, Chair, I wonder if we could then bring the strategic overview at that same time, because it means that those projects are starting to get ready to kick off. And we'll have the work that Desi's been working on to accompany the more detailed piece around the reimagining, and that might be a good place to get to. And so we'll just touch base on whether that's the May or June, but yeah, we'll aim for May.
May would be great. As long as it's got an M in front of it, then it's fine.
Desiree, would you like to update us on where the overarching flood resilience sort of communication tool has got to?
Catherine will be all over there.
Kia ora, councillors. So really, it's largely two pieces of work that I will intend to bring back to you. It's sort of narrowed, refined the scope, having talked to a number of people, to somewhere like a 15, 20 page document. And really this is how I've, so this is a good opportunity if it's not meeting what you were expecting for you to tell me. It's an education and awareness piece, so that the community is, one, assured that there's work underway, two, that they understand the size and scale of the challenge, and three, really looking forward so that they're ready to provide feedback, informed feedback, as part of the 2027 long-term plan. So it's it'll have a sort of upfront region-wide intro, and then it will have maybe 2 pages per area. So what are the river, surface and coastal issues in Wairoa? Probably Esk, Whirinaki, Tongoio, Napier, Greater Hiratonga and Central Hawke's Bay. What are we currently doing in terms of level of protection? What is the operating cost? What new river resilience are we doing as part of NIWI? And what are some future options? So it's a kind of a current state and a future state by area. And it will have very high level cost estimates. So that's the tricky part, is to put dollars against it. But using what we know now, it'll be really just trying to show the rough magnitude of cost, and that it's river, surface, so stormwater and coastal inundation and erosion. So those 3 flooding risks. And supporting that, we are working on a bit of a comms rollout. We hope to have, we've got the comms team have done an animation, which is, I think, really excellent. It has a lot of information, rich information in a 3-4 minute clip that will support the strategy, and it will end on a bit of a call to action. It'll be like, everyone has a part to play, get involved, and if you want more information, here is the strategy. But it also shows not only the work, so that's this ripple effect that Hannah came up with, that's really like the rapid rebuild, all the flood, trying to really encapsulate everything that we're doing is since the cyclone, plus the pieces, erosion control, civil defence, the other pieces of the puzzle. It also has it features that's not just us, that's also our TAs that have an important role to play in people feeling safe and being more resilient. So it tries to capture all of that in like 3 to 4 minutes. So you have a tool that you can really roll out in social media or in meetings to support the hard document.
So talk about the 3 PO.
It's the same as the ripple effect. Yes, it has taken on that board and took that on board, and we sort of moved it forward, I would say. Yeah. Same concept though as the buckets. Yeah, that's buckets, what is Genesis was the buckets, and then the PO, current future state, and it's probably more focused on these 3
river, surface and coastal risks that we're trying to reduce. I'm proposing that we call it reducing flood risk in Hawke's Bay.
It sounds fabulous, Chair. I hope you haven't oversold it, desk.
Yes.
Fabulous thing.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing, yeah.
So a large part of that, you know, Councillor Curtin sat with me and articulated what he was after with his white paper. So that was the other, so that's what it's trying to reflect, plus other conversations we've had about 3PO, it's trying to mush it all together.
Needs to be enormously simple.
Exactly.
Yes.
You should be able to read it in 2 pages and understand where you are here. This is what we're doing with this. That's the real challenge, and it seems that if you dive into every rabbit hole that you can talk about through the civil defence, you lose the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yes. So I will, the scope, I'm being really staunch that the scope is flood risk and largely infrastructure based.
As little as possible jargon, if you can.
Yep.
Swing to hit the fence, whatever that
We
means.
talked about as much
It's a
simple
baseball analogy.
simple language as possible.
You pick up on that as well?
Councillor Roadley.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Desi. It does sound amazing. Can't wait to see it. When you talk of Wairoa, are you just meaning the Wairoa River?
I would probably also cover the smaller schemes.
Just the scheme. So we're not talking about flood risk to Muhaka or Muhaka?
Yep.
Oh, we are?
Yep. In 2 pages, so it'll be brief, but try to cover.
And this is where the tension is, to make it simple but cover everyone.
But I guess the video is simple and broader, but the paper is more detailed. And how that gets rolled out, I guess we're still going to have a conversation about how we roll out the 15-pager. Yeah.
And that's the other thing is that this is really a warm-up. The language was a warm-up to take on the road, but the hard work is yet to be done, really, and that's what you'll get through the resilience. Reimagining program, where the detail will come, but this is a taster of
The reimagining is only around
the major
things,
schemes.
isn't it?
Test it.
There may be some timeline of where do these other communities slot into this deep dive? Is it 10 years back?
Big job to get it done, so if we can focus on getting for Diddy to get it done, and then let's thrash through those next steps.
Thank you, team. Well done. Fantastic paper. I need a mover and a seconder. Who would like to? Councillor Harding and Councillor Van Beek. Would you like to speak? No other speakers? All those who agree say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. Well done. Since there are no minor items on the agenda, we can close down with our karakia. Charlie, would you lead us in karakia?
Got to go home.
Kia tau, kia tata, kia tō.
Te atu whai tō tātou ariki a iu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhi ngā tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 āmine. Kia ora everyone.
Could you do me a favour?